ESPN just ranked Zion Williamson the 61st best player in the NBA. After seeing these pictures of him at Media Day, I think they're going to regret that pretty quickly. How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the Howdy Hoopers pod. Today we're going to talk about a team that I've wanted to talk about for quite a while. I've wanted to talk about them since the NBA draft, roughly, but I kind of felt like I missed my opportunity at that time. But with Media Day and these Zion Williamson pictures coming out along with ESPN's rankings, I thought this was a good time to kind of circle back and be able to talk about this. I've been making it a goal to talk about, as many NBA teams as I can before the season starts. So expect to see a lot more of these videos, and comment your favorite team down below so I can make sure I get to them before the NBA season starts. But I'm the type of guy that I like to look at the bright side, but this Pelicans team, I feel like has given me a lot of reasons not to. We'll get that back into that further into the video, but I first want to talk about Zion Williamson. The Pelicans had their Media Day. I feel like all summer long, we saw, these pictures of Zion Williamson, how he's had this amazing body transformation, like he's in the best shape of his life. We've heard that for the last couple years after, 2 or 3 years ago, he came in 300 pounds and was super, super out of shape. But we always see these body transformations these last couple of seasons of Zion. And this year, we kind of saw hints of that again. He looked pretty similar how he did last year until we saw him in the jersey. And I was literally blown away. He kind of looked pretty similar to how Luka did with his body transformations. But ESPN, let me just pull this up real quick. Where did I put my phone? Let me grab this. I'm going to tell you the players that ESPN has ranked over Zion Williamson, just the ones that are right above him. So if you didn't know, they recently came out with their top 100 players, and they had Zion Williamson, like I said, ranked 61st. But the players that were right above him were Austin Reeves, who was a great player, but obviously I don't think he's better than Zion Williamson. I just think injuries have played a big part. They have Jalen Suggs, nowhere near the level of Zion Williamson. His own teammate, Trey Murphy, they have above him. They have Miles Turner, Hartenstein, Dyson Daniels, Paul George, who just came off an awful season last year, Caruso, Cooper Flagg, Draymond Green. It's just all these players that, sure, they might have had maybe, I don't even know if you can say they had a better season last year. They just had a more healthy season than he did last year. That's always been Zion Williamson's problem. When he's on the court, he's always played an all-star level player. Literally since his second year in the NBA, he's been an easy choice for the all-star game whenever he's been healthy. The only problem is we only see Zion play about 30 games a year. But I have hope. I have hope this is finally the year that people like Zion and LaMelo Ball are finally going to be healthy. But you can tell that Zion, after having a rough start with his career, people literally body shaming him, feels like he's finally really, really taking his health super seriously. And although he's been able to use his weight as a bully ball to be able to push around smaller defenders, to be able to hang with bigger guys, that's one thing that has always played really, really strongly towards Zion Williamson's play style, is that he's quick enough to have smaller people guard him, but he weighs as much as the centers do. So it's a really hard dynamic to be able to find out who can guard Zion. But with him losing this weight, I honestly don't think it's going to really play that big of a part. I think it's just going to help him stay a lot more healthy. It's going to be a lot easier in his joints. And I think he's just going to be a lot more smarter with his health this year. And hopefully he can stay healthy. He can play at least the 65 games and maybe make his first All-NBA selection this year. I think so far he only has 2 All-Star appearances, which is pretty great for how young he is. But it's just an up and down roller coaster with Zion Williamson with his health. And it's never really been his play style. It's always been if Zion Williamson can stay healthy. And the reason why he can't stay healthy has been his weight, but it feels like that's been fixed. And I think this year might be the year that Zion Williamson is healthy. He continues to take his health super, super serious and potentially can make All-NBA. I feel like there's a lot of players that are out this year that typically would make All-NBA. And, with him making a jump and certain players being gone, it might be the perfect time for him to slide in and be able to get that first All-NBA selection. I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, if I had an interview with Zion Williamson, what would be the question I would ask him? And this is kind of random, but I wanted to ask him, how does he feel and how does he handle all these outside voices of people saying Zion Williamson's out of shape, Zion Williamson's always injured. Zion Williamson is a bust because he's not healthy and he's never made the playoffs, all these different things. And I was kind of thinking, like, Zion Williamson, whenever I see him in an interview, like these interviews I saw from Media Day, he seems like the happiest guy. And so I was like, I'd really like to ask him and see what his mindset is that. Because I'm sure, being body shamed, especially by the media, by thousands of people and articles and big companies like ESPN or different places, ranking you lower because of injuries you've had. Obviously, Zion doesn't want to be injured, but I'd be really curious to see, what his perspective, what his mindset is on that. But I talked about earlier how I've wanted to talk about this team since the draft. And the reason I want to do that is because they have a person running their organization named Joe Dumars. For the people that are a little older or that know NBA history, might know him from his playing days. Some of you, even in the early 2000s, might know him from running the teams that, the Pistons team that I'm pretty sure won the NBA Finals. He built that team and was a large part of that. But he hasn't had a job for quite a while. And there's been a reason why he hasn't had a job. And when he came in, one of his first things he did proved exactly why the guy doesn't currently have a job or didn't have a job until they hired him. What he did with one of his first moves was he traded a pick swap for next year between their pick and I think it was the Bucks pick to the Hawks for their pick that was, I think it was just right outside the lottery. I'm not exactly sure what number. I feel like it was like 13, 15, somewhere in that range for Derek Queen. And you might be wondering why I'm bringing this up. Derek Queen, great player. Like, I enjoyed watching him in college. Like, I think he'll be a fine NBA player. But trading that pick, do they know that the Pelicans are in the Western Conference? The hardest conference in the NBA. I mean, there's only two, but probably the hardest conference that we've seen in the last 10 years is this season. There are so many stacked teams. I feel like there's going to be legit like teams that have hopes of making it to, the conference finals or whatever that are going to be in the play-in. And the Pelicans, although they have a lot of fun pieces, which I'm going to talk about a little later, I just don't think they can make the playoffs. Even if Zion Williamson is playing, his best basketball, I just don't think this roster is good enough to compete with those teams. And with that being said, even if they're, let's say, they are in the play-in, they just barely miss the play-in, and they go to the lottery. We've seen those teams that have just barely missed the play-in land the first, second, third, fourth overall pick in the draft. So what's stopping them from missing the playoffs and giving, the Atlanta Hawks the first overall pick, giving them AJ DeBonsa? Like, that was such short-term thinking. And the reason why I use short-term thinking with that was because in his media day interview, Joe Dumars, he talked about how they asked him about the playoffs, and he said his goal was not to make the playoffs, which I thought sounded kind of crazy. He said their first goal was to try to compete every night, to compete every single game, which sounds smart. But also in the back of my head, I'm just thinking, I'm like, this is literally the guy that potentially just traded away the first overall pick for what? For a late lottery pick, for a player that was just outside the lottery that is currently injured and is not going to play for what I think is a good portion this season. I just feel like the Pelicans are going to be ran with him in charge, similar to how the Sacramento Kings were, and they're just going to be a team that just misses the playoff every single year and might need to do a reset, which is sad because I'm literally talking about Zion Williamson's about to have the best year of his career, but I also feel like they need to have a hard reset. But I want to talk about some of their players, talk more about their offseason. This offseason they brought in Jordan Poole and Looney, two great additions. I've liked Jordan Poole. I liked him when he was on the Warriors. I thought he was a lot of fun. But I think he's the type of player, he reminds me a lot of Jordan Clarkson. I feel like he's a great player that can come off the bench, be a flamethrower. Some nights he might give you 12 points, and other nights he might give you 35, 40 points. He's kind of just that flamethrower type of player that can come in and can be a wild card off the bench. So he's a great player. He's fun. Looney, great center. I was sad to see him also leave the Warriors. Those two are reunited again. But, great additions, but they're not game changers for this team. But there's so many players. I'm looking at this list. I have a whole bunch of players that I want to talk about or briefly mention that I'm like, man, I would love to see Herb Jones on a different team. I would love to see Herb Jones on a team that is competing for a title, and he can come in and just be a great defender, be a spark player, be that, that 3-and-D or that defensive pest on the team that helps put, a really good team over the top to be able to compete. But also even players like, Trey Murphy, they had him ranked above Zion. I've been a really big fan of Trey Murphy's game. For the last 2 years, it feels like I've been like, okay, this is the year. This is the year. I want to see what he can do. This is the year he's going to make the jump. And I'm not as high on him this year. I think he's going to be a really good NBA player. I still think he's going to get a lot better, but I don't think he's going to be able to reach the all-star level that I thought potentially he would. I think he'll be one of those players, in 5 or 6 years that we're looking at that's maybe like a CJ McCollum that's man, this player is one of the best players that we've seen, or the best player in the NBA that hasn't made the all-star team. So I'm really high on him, and those players are both really intriguing players that would look great on a contending team. And they could, if they did potentially reset, all these players they could trade and, get assets back. But also it's hard. Why would you do that this season when you don't even have your pick next year? It's just really, really frustrating because, maybe you have one more down year. The Pelicans miss it after putting up, showing improvement from last year, losing the play-in or something, and then get a good pick. And then you have a co-star to go with Zion Williamson. But also another player that's really intriguing is DeJounte Murray. He's been hurt, but he's a player that's okay, he's really, really interesting. He's a player that you think would fit perfectly with this team, but it just doesn't seem like, I don't know, this team just can't put everything together. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think they brought him in and we're expecting more out of him than what they thought they could have. We already talked about Derek Queen and Joe Dumars, but another player that's another team that could really use a player like this would be Jose Alvarado. A lot of contending teams would love to have, a defensive pass come off this team. So you're looking at this roster, looking at all these players. I'm like, man, they have a lot of really fun pieces. This team is going to be really, really fun to watch, but also I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. Personally, I think they're either going to be, the 10th or the 11th 10th or 11th seed. So be in the bottom half of the play-in, but I don't think they're going to make it. There's just too many good teams in the Western Conference. If they're in the Eastern Conference, I think they actually should be in the Eastern Conference, but it just didn't land out that way with where they are and everything. If they were in the Eastern Conference, I would say, okay, yeah, I could see them being, 7, 8, maybe if they have blow all expectations out, be the 6th seed. But they're in the Western Conference, and there's just too many teams that are competing for that, those final couple playoff spots. But yeah, this team has been really confusing. I'm hoping they're not going on the same track that teams like the Sacramento Kings have that missed the playoffs for, 10 plus years. And, they made it 1 year and then they're back out to where they were again. I'm really hoping that's not the case, but I always want to look at the bright side of all situations for teams. I'm a Jazz fan, and right now, most people will be like, man, I'm so sorry you're a Jazz fan. There's nothing to look forward to. You don't really have a clear-cut future. There might be little teeny things, but even with the Jazz, or let's say we're talking about the Pelicans right now, there's always bright sides to this. I think you're going to have a lot of fun players. You're going to have a lot of players that are fan favorites. I think you're going to love players like, Jordan Poole. Everyone loves Looney. You already have a whole bunch of guys on your team that I'm sure your fan base loves to death. I'm sure they're frustrated with Zion, but they're also super excited about the potential he has. And I think this is finally the year that Zion Williamson breaks out again, and shows that, I might have had a couple years where I was injured, but I'm still that same Zion Williamson. I might have had all these injuries, but I'm still as explosive as I was in my second or third year. These injuries, they set me back for short-term periods, but they didn't set me back for the long term. I'm still that same player. I'm still that, 26 point per game player, 8 rebounds, and, maybe he improves his playmaking and becomes a player that's a triple-double threat on any given night. I can't really see him getting 10 assists, but maybe he bumps it up to, 6 or 7 or whatever it is, with the help of some of these players. But I'm just really, really optimistic about Zion Williamson, and I think this is finally the year that he gets back on track. that people, put all the body shaming, weight shaming to the side, and we're just able to enjoy Zion Williamson. Literally since he was a junior in high school, we've been waiting for this guy to make it to the NBA, and it's just disappointing when players are injured and we don't get to see them the way we want to. But I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, if Zion Williamson's healthy, the NBA is significantly more entertaining, and I think the Pelicans will be more enjoyable to watch too. Even if they don't miss the playoffs, it gives something the Pelicans fans to look forward to all season long. But I appreciate you guys watching this video. If you made it this far, like I said in the beginning of the video, make sure to drop your favorite team down in the comments, and I will make sure to talk about them before the NBA season. But I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.